Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Avodah Zarah daf Mem Gimel. We are going to begin on Mem Gimel of Aleph, about 8 lines from the top by the 2 dots Tarabana. So we were learning in the previous Mishnah that if a person would find kalim and there are engraved on them certain things, specifically the sun or the moon, or a source darkoin, then you're supposed to throw them into the Yam HaMelech. So in this, the Gemara asks, Ezu source darkoin, what exactly is that? So Pirush Rabbi Shimon Eliezer, Kol sheyesh lo tzitzin ben pirkov. So anytime you have these fins that are between the joints, which is specifically referring to a serpent-like creation, and that's what it's referring to. So Macharav Asi ben pirkit savor, between the joints of the neck. Fine. Or could be the backbone. All right, so Omer Rab Chama Rab Chanina Halacha Rab Shimon Eliezer, that is what it's referring to. Okay. And Rashi says, Shim ein lo tzitzin mutter. If it doesn't have this exact image, then it's mutter. Omer Rabba Bar Chana Omer Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Pamach Asois Mahalei Chachar Rab Eliezer HaKaper Beribi Bederach. I was following this guy on the road. Umatzu Sham Tabas, we found a ring. Violet Surus Darkoin, and therefore it's a problem, right? Because it's Avodah Zarah. So Umatzu Obikachavim Katan. We first encountered a Obikachavim who's a minor. V'loi Armelu Klum. We said nothing to him because, as we're going to see, he can't really be mavatal because he's not an expert in Avodah Zarah. However, Umatzu Obikachavim Gadol v'Armelu Batwa. We said, we want you to nullify this ring. V'batwa. He refused to do it. Now, why couldn't they do it? Because we saw in yesterday's daf, Yisrael cannot be mavatal Avodah Zarah, and Akum could. So, Satru, they slapped him, and they pushed him. Rashi says, he called al-alechi on the jaw, ubatal, shema minatolas. So Shema Mina, the first of the 3 things we see is Okachavim Mavatal V'Kachavim Shalo V'Shel Chavero, which we established in yesterday's daf as well, that not only can Okachavim Mavatal his own idols, but also that of his friend. Shema Mina Yodea B'Tiv Shalo V'Kachavim V'Shem Shemehu Mavatal. Only someone who knows the matter of Avodah Zarah and its worship can be Mavatal it, like an adult. That's why they didn't bother asking the kid. Lastly, you could even force an akum to be mavatal. So the question is, why did they have to go through all this trouble? So Megadim Rabbi Chanina, the Leser Rabbi Eliezer Kafir Beribi Hadetanan, he doesn't agree with this famous sugya. It says hamatzil hamatzil min ari. Someone who's saved from a lion, min a dog from a bear, min a namar, like a leper, min a gaius, or from our troops, min a nar, from a raging river, mizuta shal yam, or tides of the sea, shul isoi shal nahar, the spoils of river, v'hamaitzi b'siratia uplatia gedoyla, and let's say he finds this item in a highway or in a marketplace. So in this situation, it's going to be yours. There's nothing you have to worry about. If, let's say, somehow these items were hefker, basically, because there's no way anyone had any connection to them, and then you encounter them, they're mutter to you, apparently. So there's yish, we hold that there's a concept of yish, and Rashi explains the kasha, once the guy lost this ring, so the Ovechachavim is like, okay, I lost it, so he has yish, he's not going to get it back. Obviously, he's not going to get it back, which means the Avodah Kachavim, this idol worshiper, cannot worship it because it has to be in front of him. So basically, therefore, it should be batal. He's mavatal. The akum was mavatal when he lost it. So why do you have to go out of your way to find some other person to be mavatal it? So Amr Rabbi and he dimina miyayish misura mi miyayish. No, it's true that the one who lost it the Ovis Kochavim is miyayish. He's not going to expect to get it back, but nonetheless, he's not miyayish it from it being usher. In other words, Meimer Omar, he'll say like this: if a fellow idol worshiper finds my ring, so miflach palachla, let him derive enjoyment of worshiping it. Yisrael mishkachla, but if a yid finds it, I know they're not going to worship idols, but I needed a mehayikarin, it's a very expensive ring, so mazvin lo v'chachavim, they'll probably sell it to v'chachavim, so it's still going to be used for Avodah Zarah, and therefore that's the reason why they needed to be mavat, have someone be mavat. Now we have the famous Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, Tanan Hassam, that when it came to the Eidim, to be able to give proper testimony regarding the seeing of the new moon for it to be Rosh Chodesh, so some were more knowledgeable than others, and therefore because of this, Demus Suris Levanois Hayolo Rabbi Gamliel, Bal Yasai, Betavlo, Bekaisel. So what he did, very wisely apparently, we'll see if it was wise, that Rabbi Gamliel made all these pictures, and he used to show all these different pictures of different moons in different forms, and basically asked them, as we're going to see, and it was on his wall. Shebehen Mara es Hahed Yoitos. He would ask the regular people, Yermohen Kazeri Isem or Kazeri Isem. How did you see the moon? Did it look like this picture? Did it look like this picture? And therefore, for those that didn't know how to necessarily express themselves exactly how they saw it, but they'll remember when they actually have a visual aid. So we had all these pictures of moons, but we just saw in our Mishnah that you're not allowed to have a kli which has a tsuras levana on it. So for the Gemara, Mishari, this is straight from other sugyas, right? This is, again, Masechtas Rosh Hashanah discusses this at length, as well as elsewhere. Anyway, Umi Shari Buksid, the Pasuk says, Sasuniti, so you're not supposed to make a Avodah Zarah. Sasun b'demush shimshi, you cannot make a picture Kidemush Shamshi of the likeness of the sun. Mishamshin Lafanai. So Rabbi lo asra Taira ela shemashim she'eshel lasos kamoisim. The whole issue is making it mamish the way that it was its form. Kedasanya lo yasa adam bias tavnis heichel, that you can't make a replica of it. So maybe it's not really an issue of making a picture of a moon because you're not really making a whole replica of what the moon is necessarily. And certainly if you would make like a partial picture of it and it's not perfect, so it's not an issue. But your person is not allowed to make their house look exactly like the Beis HaMikdash, for example. Aksadra Tavnis Ulam, or to have their Aksadra look like the Ulam room in which goes to the Kodesh. Chatzur Tabnis Zarah, Shulchan Tabnis Shulchan. You can't have a Shulchan. You could easily follow whatever it says in the Torah and make it exactly the same, but you're not allowed to. Menorah Tabnis Menorah. You can't make a menorah the same way it was the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. However, there are some exceptions. Avahu Oisa Shel Hey V'Shel Vav V'Shel Ches. The menorah in the Mikdash, in the Mishkan, was 7 branches. So if you make it of different branches, like there's no issur of making a chanukiyah, we call it a chanukiyah, because it's not allowed to be a menorah. It's not allowed to be 7 branches, so it's okay. Our chanukiyah is fine. The truth is, it doesn't make any difference. Even if it's made out of other metals, it's not allowed. However, Rashi points out, based on a miyud riboy miyut, it's Rebi Komili, and the miyut is cheras. If you made it out of some type of like earthenware, pottery, or like, that is not an issue if it's 7. Any other metallic material is asur. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Omer Afshel Eitzel Yasa Kadesh Yasa Beis Chashmonoi, that you shouldn't make it out of wood just like the Chashmonoim does. So Amalom Misham Raya Shefudin Shel Barzel Hoya. It was made out of metal, and it was just covered with wood. So it's not that it was really wood; it was really made out of metal. So that was the issue. But maybe out of eitz alone is not an issue. So what happened? Hashiru asim shel kesef. As they developed more money, they made out of silver. Chazon v'yeshiru, they became more rich. Then asim shel zahav, and they made out of gold, which is definitely a problem. Fine. So you're saying, well, if it's something which you cannot duplicate, then that's allowed. Is that true of Asanya? The pasuk says, it says you're not allowed to make something which has the appearance comparable to the sun. So Rabbi, as we continue to Mem Gilmum Beis, the lo aser Torah el demus dalad panim. But Hadi Hadadi, as we actually saw this in yesterday's daf and Rashi, that the whole issue is having the dalad panim. As Rashi points out, there were these 4 images which were on the connected to the Kisei HaKavod, which was the face of a shore, an ox, a person, a lion, and a nesher. The question was the shore because maybe not because of the Egel HaZahav, and maybe it was another face of a person. Okay. Regardless, that is the issue. If you make those 4 images beyachad, that's a problem. Or maybe those 3 and then Adam alone is a problem, as we saw in yesterday's daf. So anyway, lo aser Torah el b'demus dalad panim b'hadadi adad, if they're together. Anything else is okay. El miyata appears of Adam l'chudi tishtri. You're telling me the image of a face of a person, just one of the 4 is allowed. Lavatanya kol hapratzuf. We said this yesterday. Kol hapratzuf is mutarin chutz min parts of Adam. So maybe who the Bered Rabbi Yeshua, Pirkei Rabbi Yeshua Shemili. I heard this. It says like this in the pasuk: "Osasun nitin lo sasun oisi." That a person should not make an Adam that way. Shar shemashim shari. As we said, that it's specific when it comes to the most of an Adam. That we're more strict. However, when it comes to all the other ones, we're not. Therefore, again, it's not a problem with Rabbi Gamliel. Mishar shemashim mishar, is that true? Vasanya, again, the pasuk says lo sasun iti lo sasun kedemush shimshi hamishamishin lefane b'monoim, and it gives more examples than just what we just talked about, than about the parts of Adam. Kagoin ofanim v'sorafim v'chayis hakodesh malchi yesharis, the different administrating angels and the like. You cannot make images and pictures of angels. So Rabbi lo aser Torah el shemashim shebe mador ha'el yoin, only that which is in the upper abode. Because Rashi quotes, it says "Osi," like with me, like the angels, but the sun, the moon, these things which are lamata or the tachtoin is allowed. So the Gemara says, one second, is that true? V'shibi mador hatach mishar v'sanya asher b'shemayim, says Orabos chamul lavana. Here's the problem. It says explicitly you cannot make a tavnis of the moon. Kochav mazalois mimal is Orabos malchi yesharis. So kitanya hahi la'avdam. It just means you can't worship them. So wait a second. Ila avdam. I feel shilshul kata nami. We already said even a shilshul, Rashi said is a talas, even a little worm, even a small little bug, nothing. If you worship it, it's usher. So it can't be coming to tell us that these are the things that you can't worship. You can't worship anything. So how do we understand this? So obviously it's talking not about worshiping them. It's even making them. So inachanam, you're right. Umasei for the kra naf. We go now from the end of the post in the sign. It says Asher ba'aretz arabos yamim and harais harim begavois. That when it comes to all different types of bodies of water and mountains and valleys, you can't worship them. Mitachas arabos shilshul katan v'yasia greidosa. Fine. V'yasia greidosa mishari. So even making the images, are they moter v'sanya lo sasan niti lo sasan kidmu shimshi hamishamishin lefonai b'morim k'goyin chamul avana kavamazos. So we're back to our original question. Basically, it took us a little bit of time to get to it, but the question is, how could Rabbi Gamliel have made these pictures? So we have a few answers. Shani Rabbi Gamliel dacher masulo. Don't worry, he didn't do it. He wouldn't do it. He would ask, and Akum did it, right? So then the non-Jew made it, so it's allowed. Rabbi Yehuda, the Cherem Asuloi. With the case of Rabbi Yehuda, the Cherem also did it, and therefore it was a problem with him. So V'Amar Le Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda Shinna Samin Edid Dadain, that literally the eyes should be removed. You should remove the eyes. In other words, you should diminish the image because you have to ruin it in some way. So, but why? If he didn't make it, so then what's the problem? It must be that even if it was even a cherim, an akum was asulo, it's still a problem. Hasam b'chaismo boilet. Over there, it was a protruding image. And the whole issue over there was because of chshad, says Rashi. Shoyomer la hu oived. So we don't want people to say that he's actually using it and he's worshiping idols. Asanya. Tabash chaisma boilet. If you have a ring in which it protrudes out an image, asla hanicha. You're not allowed to have it. But you can actually sign with it, right? You can use it. They would dip the signet ring into a wax, and this is way that it was determined that it was specifically this person who sealed an envelope or something. So you can't keep it, you can sign with it. So chaisma shaikeya mutter. If it's submerged, then it's allowed. Mutter hanicha v'asul chais lichtain ba. So it's interesting. If it's submerged, then you can't sign with it. It's legally it doesn't do anything. It has to be an image that's boilate. But if it's shaikeya, if it's a submerged image, then you can't sign with it. But you're allowed to keep it because it's not a form of Avodah Zarah. So the whole issue is because of chshad. We are afraid that who knows what people are going to say when it comes to this. So, but not these pictures, right? So Baha Bacon is the shaf Yosef ben Harda the ukmi ba Andarta. There was this selim, as Rashi says, an image. Babi Aili ba Avodah Shmuel v'Levi u'Matzu b'Gavo. Used to daven right over there. No one was concerned of chshad over there. So why are we concerned of chshad over here by Rabbi Yehuda? No, Rabbim Shani. It's different over there because there was a bunch of people there. So since everyone was davening, so it was obviously they weren't davening to this image. But when it comes to an individual, there's chshad. When a lot of people are around, there's no issue of chshad. Now, Rabbi Gamliel, the Yachid, who Havi. So 1 second. If Rabbi Gamliel was a Yachid, why weren't people afraid of chshad that maybe he was using these pictures of moons for also Avodah Zarah? No. Kivan de Nasi who Shchichi Rabim Gabe. There's no issue by Rabbi Gamliel because he was a Nasi who was never alone. This was and also, by the way, this was generally done in front of a lot of people because there was witnesses there. So he really only used this for this purpose. So therefore, and he was a Nasi, so he really didn't have a lot of private life. So therefore, because of that, it wasn't an issue of chshad. So again, one answer, it was made by someone else, by an akum, or it was actually in pieces. It wasn't a whole thing. Says Rashi Shocholiyos. It wasn't all attached. El b'shas b'dikas edim, only at the time when the witnesses were examined. V'chol yoyma, all the time, l'chazula v'leika chashada. There's no issue of chashad. V'imois eimol l'slamid shani, that he was not doing this for Avodah Zarah, he was doing it with Slamid to basically to teach, and to learn, to sign a little similar to lasais. You're not to learn to do certain things like Avodah Zarah in order to do the Avodah Zarah. But you are allowed to l'haven l'haydais. There we are leaning. So we saw a distinction. If, as Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said in our Mishnah on Mem Beis and Beis, if the kalim are mechubadim, distinguished kalim, we'll see what that means, then it's aser if there's a tzura of a lavana, or again the dark oin or the chama. However, if these are kalim hamuvazim, these are disgraceful kalim, so then we're makel, according to Shmuel. So the question is, what does that mean? So ezu hein mechubad ve'ezu mevuzim. So Amara mechubadim l'mal min hamayim. If the pitchers are above the water level, then it's mechubed. However, mevuzim l'makdim min hamayim. If the pitchers are below the water level on the inside where there's liquid that touches it, so it's obviously not for Avodah Zarah. Shmuel Omer el ve'el mevuzin hein. No, the fact is, if they are above even if it's above the water level, it's still mevuzah. El Elohein mechubadim shal hashirin ve'al hanazamim ve'al hatabois. If it's on like jewelry, like rings and things of that nature, that is mechubadim. Tanya Kavasa de Shmuel mechubadim shal hashirin ve'al hanazam ve'al hatabois. Mevuzim, what is something which is like a lower level? Shal hayadois ve'al hakum. Kumsin, like a kumkum, like a pot or things of that nature. Yel machme chamin, like an urn to heat water. Or v'shal hasadinin v'al or v'al hamit tafchos. If it's on tablecloths or hand towels, those are not mechubed. That's like just simple, ordinary kalim. Doesn't mean they're disgraceful kalim, but they're not choshev, and therefore, even though there's a tzur on it, probably it wasn't used for Avodah Zarah. It's not going to be Avodah Zarah, and therefore it's mutter. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's look at a few questions. Start off with question 5. Me'eze chomer isul kuliyam alasos dmus medayra. Me'eze mutter kuliyam, parish Rashi. So, if it's made out of matechais, any type of metal, it's aser. However, if it's cheres, if it's made out of earthenware, it's mutter. Question 6. How was he able to make these pictures of the moon? It says, so either a cherem asulo, that someone else made it, the akum, or it's l'slamid shani, that it was done to teach. It wasn't lasois, to be able to do the Avodah Zarah. It was in order for them to learn and for them to be able to give up psak. And therefore, that reason, those are the two reasons why case of Rabbi Gamliel is different. Why is not an issue of chashad? That's a separate question. Those two questions get sometimes mixed in. Okay, let's look at question TA. 24. I think we did that already. So, yeah, so we did that. Yesterday's daf. It was bepachsa. You smashed it like with a hammer, and it still remains, or there that maybe you would pick it up. Okay, that was yesterday's daf. Today's daf is TA25. Tanan. Hamaitze kelim elim suras chamosh and will oimer shal mechubadim asum shal muvozim mutarin. My mechubadim mahin muvozim. I got this wrong. Okay, so l'chad man the oimer l'mal mahamayim mechubadim. If it's above the water level, it's honorable. It's below, it's mavusa. Or no, el is mavusa. If it's a takshit, if it's like jewelry, that's mechubed. But if it's like ordinary pots, pans, and the like, and things of that nature, or tablecloths, then that's considered mavuzim. Again, that doesn't mean disgraceful. It just means it's ordinary, and therefore they're lenient. Adka.